We're working on the front wheel here because we knew we were going to have to address this dust cap being off, and this caliper seemed to be sticking. So I pulled the caliper off and used my C-clamp and pushed the pistons in. We'll see if that does anything. Maybe pushing them in might kind of free them up a little bit. It's got, looks like brand new pads on it. It's a shame because the other side's soaked in brake fluid. So we're gonna have to put a set of pads on it regardless, but the rotors are not great, but you know, they are what they are. We'll run them for now. They're fairly flat, let's put it that way, and they got a lip. We got a lot of wear on them. It really probably needs 4 rotors at some point, but we're not doing that yet. The bearing has got, it's got a little bit of discoloration. You know, it's probably got some use and it may have gotten a little hot at some point, but it looks good. It's smooth. There's no scoring on it. It looks like a good bearing. The race looks good, so we're going to run it. The inner bearing, I could not get a wheel seal locally. It was going to have to be special ordered from anywhere, and it was going to take a few days. So I'm not going to knock out that bearing before I pulled this all apart. I checked, and it felt real smooth. It didn't feel gritty. It didn't feel rough. So I have a feeling, you know, that inner bearing's fine. What I did is I wiped out any grease that was immediately behind that front bearing that could have gotten contaminated from that dust cap being off, but I don't think it was run long like that. There was not a bunch of there's not a ton of grease, you know, in here. There's really not any. I mean, just a little bit. So I think what happened is the guy I got it from probably did that, and the only driving it's really had is the driving I've done, and it does have a cap protecting it over, so that would have provided a little bit of seal against dirt and junk. But you know, we've wiped that out real good. We'll throw some new grease in there. We'll try to push some new grease into that back bearing without removing it, and we'll pack the front bearing and put all this back together. I beat the cap, the dust cap, back out, and I think it's going to do okay. It's not the prettiest thing, but I don't think it'll rub. We'll see. And here's the nut and the bearing. So we'll repack that. It's a Germany bearing. I don't know if it's the original, but we'll repack it and put it all back together. I picked up some wheel bearing grease while I was out, and I also picked up longer bolt. I could not get cap head, Allen head, so I had to get just a regular. We'll have to see if this will clear the oil pan with the socket on it. Maybe with a 1/4-inch drive I can do it. We'll just have to see. So if that doesn't work, I'll have to go to a bolt supply place. The Tractor Supply just did not have a long enough or a longer bolt than this. So yeah, this one's, I'm sure, overkill as far as length, but the one below it wasn't much longer, so I wasn't sure what we would need. So now that we've got all this done, let's repack this, put it back on. Like I said, I don't know if we're going to save this caliper. I took my C-clamp and pushed the pistons in. We'll see if that frees it up. If not, we're going to need 2 front calipers. These are ATE calipers. I looked it up, and the rear are also ATE. They're not the Bendix. Neither one of them are the Bendix. So we'll see. You know, maybe we can save this one, maybe not. But we're at least going to need a passenger front wheel bearing, or passenger front caliper, and probably brake lines all the way around, brake hoses. So let's continue on. All right, back together. That cap, I had to knock it off just a hair. It's just barely touching. Now it's not. So I need to get a new cap. Even after straightening out, it's still beat in too much. So we'll get one of those either from the junkyard next time I go, or I'll just order one. Bearings all packed, good shape. Need to put the caliper back on, and then we're going to go ahead and see if we can put one of these bolts on the oil pan for that transmission cooler line. I was going to check the differential oil, but I do not have a 14 millimeter plug. I welded a nut to a bolt. I had a 14 millimeter head and twisted it off. So we're going to have to get one. But I think the next thing I'll do is we'll go ahead and drain the coolant after I get the caliper on and get that bolt in. I'm going to drain, well, it's got water in it, drain the water that's in it, and we'll go ahead and put coolant in it. I haven't seen any leaks. We've run it quite a bit. Don't see any water leaking or anything, so I think we're good to go ahead. That radiator seems to be holding, so we'll go ahead and put some coolant in it before the weather turns cold. I cleaned the battery tray and cleaned the terminals. Got the bolts freed up on them. And clean the terminals on the battery itself. So, kind of doing just a bunch of miscellaneous little stuff. Little stuff adds up, you know. And then we'll need to, might check and see, this tire here leaks. Might see if I can see where it's leaking. I need to check this one, make sure it doesn't leak. And we're going to put those on there. And we'll throw that one back in the trunk as a spare. Make sure this rim's okay where it's damaged. Like I said, this will stay a spare. Once I get a tire, it's got, you know, that bad curb rash right here. So. All right, so of course the pads are loose on here. That's how it spins with no drag from the caliper. Let's see how tight it gets once we pump the brakes up. Pumping up hard. Plenty of fluid. That's a good sign. It's pumped up, but it's not. It's getting better. Probably should start it up and get the power brakes going. It definitely, the pedal has a better feel to it. Before it was just really stiff. Now it's got some give and it gets hard. I think we had some of the rear calipers that were stuck, and probably that front one. And they may be pulling back like they're supposed to now. There, we got a good firm pedal now. Oh. Stuck. Or dragging. This one, of course, is leaking. I don't know. I think it's still sticking. That's pretty stiff. I don't know. It may free up. It's not stuck. It's just not free. The rear is gonna be harder to tell. That's good. Ooh. And I think this side is stuck. Yep, that is stuck. That's stuck more than that one. So we've got at least probably one sticking rear, and we've got one sticking front that may free up, so we'll have to see, and one leaking front. So we may end up just putting 4 calipers on it. Really probably needs 4 calipers and 4 rotors. But we'll see. We'll see what we do. It gets expensive, so we might do a little at a time.